Today, I want to talk about some unconventional ways to own less stuff. And I say unconventional because there are a lot of ways that we talk about quite often, like using a one in, one out rule, or just buying less, or learning to curate your space and select things better that you want to keep. But there are some more unconventional ways that you could be tapping into to help decrease the clutter in your home and just generally own less stuff. So let's just dive right in. Number one is to make better lists. One unconventional way to own less stuff, whether you're talking about like a grocery list, clothing list, gift or wish listing, planning ahead can help you to make more intentional purchases and just reduce clutter. Get better and more savvy with your lists. Shoppers who use a list spend less money and make fewer unplanned purchases. And I don't even think that this is surprising to anyone because we've all gone shopping with a list and without a list before, and you've seen the difference in your cart, right? This practice helps to prevent buying excess food that might go bad even before it's used because everything looks so good. You buy a whole bunch and then you find that you couldn't possibly eat that much within that amount of time. You're reducing waste, you're reducing the clutter in your kitchen, and according to a survey from the University of Pennsylvania, people who shopped with a list spent 23% less than people who did not. You probably are using a list whenever you go grocery shopping. I think that most of us do, but you may not be using a list when you go clothes shopping. And this is actually a really important step if you're hoping to curate a wardrobe instead of just having a closet of crammed clothes. This approach makes sure that you're buying things that integrate well with items that you already own and that you're not buying duplicates or things that you're just not actually going to wear that happen to catch your eye when you're at the store. This is the basic concept behind things like a capsule wardrobe, where you have a smaller, really carefully selected collection of clothes that work together. And because they're so versatile and they work so well together because you plan them that way, you're able to make significantly more outfits with less using the items you already own. But what about making lists for things that you're not necessarily shopping for, but that you just want? It's actually a really good idea. It's a really savvy idea to keep gift lists or wish lists so that you have handy ideas ready for various occasions, birthdays, Christmas, whenever somebody asks if there's anything that you need. It really reduces that last minute rush to think of something random. They help to manage the desire for that instant gratification so that you can even make wish lists for things that you intend to buy yourself in the future or that you're considering buying. They allow you to park items that you want without buying them immediately on the spot. And this delay can often lead to reconsidering the need for an item and reducing those impulse buys, which then reduces the clutter in your home. So, in a nutshell, by making better lists, you plan your purchases more thoughtfully, you avoid unnecessary items, and you keep your living space organized and clutter-free. Don't just wing it. Another unconventional way to own less stuff is to get savvy with jars. Jars are kind of a standard staple for anybody who's trying to live more eco-friendly or zero waste. But regardless, they're just a better way to keep down the clutter in your home and to make sure that you're getting the most out of the things that you've already spent money on. These are great for transferring the remaining contents for things like giant pump bottles that you can't quite get to the bottom of because the pump doesn't reach that far. If you have some extra small jars in your house, that's great for really being able to empty and get every last bit of content from soaps, shampoos, conditioners. You may not need to buy products nearly as often as you might think. I've shared before about doing a use it up challenge, and little jars are great for doing things like that when you want to challenge yourself to go through your home and use up every last bit of your products before buying new products. It can be fun, it can be challenging, and it's just a really great way to be more eco-friendly and more financially friendly with your wallet. I will say it's a good idea to be selective with the jars that you choose. There is such a thing as having too many jars. I have many people that I know who just have too many jars, and I'm like, you don't need to save another pickle jar. That's really where the savvy part comes in. I'm not telling you just to be a jar hoarder, but to get savvy with jars. Find the jars that you really like the wee yogurt jars. If you're somebody like me who occasionally makes your own bath salts or face products with essential oils, these types of jars are really great for holding on to things like that. They're really versatile and can be used for random household uses. Baby jars are another thing that I've used in the past for some of my homemade products. Of course, you can use a variety of jars for storing leftovers, reducing food waste, and the right adorable jar or collection of the same adorable jar can be really great for organizing and storing things like seasonings, flour, sugar, nuts. You can really decorate your refrigerator and your spices and your pantry well using a variety of sizes of jars and save yourself a ton of money because you can spend a lot of money just in buying overpriced containers and and sorters, and some of them are literally just glass jars that you're spending too much money on because they're being marketed as organizers. Another unconventional way to own less stuff is to walk more. Stay with me here. Walking boosts creativity and it releases endorphins. It helps you to unplug from daily stressors and it gets you away from the ads that are on those daily stressors, and it leads you to a clear mind and reduced anxiety. A lot of times when we buy things, when we bring more things into our home, it's because we're feeling down and depressed or we're feeling anxious and stressed, and we're reaching to that as just something to make us feel a little bit better. Also, walking in natural settings has a tendency to shift your perspective. Nature has been proven to increase mindfulness, gratitude, and contentment. There have been full books written on the subject. It just changes the way that you think. Like every time I go camping, I quickly realize how little I need. When I bring too much stuff camping with me, it's really more of a hindrance. I would rather use a single bowl and a coffee cup than hand wash a bin full of dishes in the hot sun. Like, no thank you, I'll take my cup. And being in open, natural spaces while walking or camps, if that's your jam, helps you to feel the freedom of just having more space, being around more space. Have you ever noticed, like, if you're outside for a while and you walk back into your house, all of a sudden everything feels much darker, it feels a little bit more claustrophobic, like you get used to the openness and the space and the light and the cool wind or hot wind, whatever it happens to be. You start urging for more space. Plus, just being out of the house helps you to reduce boredom. You have more things occupying your mental space, your visual space, there's just more going on. And so you're less likely to sit there boredom shopping. And you're less likely to think of new things to add to your home when you're not stuck in your home. And of course, if you're walking or biking to shopping locations, well, that's going to quickly reduce what you're able to bring home. That transporting effort will make you much more selective. Number 4, play with the things you want, or take a date with your desires. Sometimes the idea of something can be so overwhelming and dreamy that we almost feel disappointed once we finally pull the trigger and get it. Try taking a date with the things that you think you can't live without. Think you can't live without a steam cleaner? Borrow one for a week and see if you still feel excited by the end of the next week. Think you can't live without that new camera? I visited the store to play with some of the top of the line cameras and was honestly a little bit underwhelmed compared to what I currently have. They had like cool high-tech gadgets, but in practice, nothing that I would use regularly or even notice. So this approach really just helps you to make better and more informed purchases. You've probably heard of the hedonic treadmill or hedonic adaptation, or maybe you haven't, but it's a concept that refers to how quickly we adapt to new things, and our initial excitement tends to fade. It's also called shiny object syndrome, which you may have heard of, but it's called the hedonic treadmill because it just never stops. You get one thing that you want and the excitement fades away, so you focus on another thing and then another thing. And we tend to focus on the positives of purchasing before buying more than we focus on the positives of the things that we've already bought. James Clear says in the book Atomic Habits that the wanting centers of the brain are larger and more active than the liking centers of the brain. The wanting centers include things like the brainstem, the nucleus accumbens, the ventral tegmental areas, the dorsal striatum, the amygdala, prefrontal cortex. All these different areas are part of the wanting centers of the brain. But the liking centers, the things that light up whenever you actually receive the thing that you thought you really wanted, that's much smaller and scattered. They're called hedonic hotspots. Playing with the things that you think you want can help you to reduce those impulse purchases and make sure that you're buying things that you're going to enjoy for the long run, that you're making a well-informed, thoughtful decision. And number 5, ditch extra tables and display dishes. If you battle with flat surface syndrome, consider ditching the things that you're putting all of this stuff on. Get rid of some of the extra surfaces. Get rid of some of the extra catch-all spaces. These catch-all spots can quickly become magnets for stuff that we don't need and forgot was ever even there. So by reducing the number of surfaces that are available, you're going to naturally limit places where clutter accumulates. This is another thing that James Clear frequently talks about in his book Atomic Habits. It's like throughout the entire book, he emphasizes the power of environmental design in shaping our habits. Our physical surroundings significantly impact our behavior when it comes to our stuff and our space and the things that we hold on to, the things that we accumulate. So if you want to own less stuff, create a space that encourages you to own less stuff. Hopefully you found these tips helpful. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. I would love to hear any other unconventional ideas that you're able to come up with down in the comments. I was kind of straining my brain to think of things to add to this list. So if you've got some good ones, I would love to hear them down below. And if you want to learn my full formula for creating holistic and clutter-free spaces, then I recommend you check out my free workshop. It is down in the description. You can also access it at miadanielle.com/workshop. I'll chat with you next week.